Hello, folks. Welcome to the Genuinely Interested podcast. I'm your host, Roy Bensby. This podcast is an opportunity for me to speak with some of the most interesting people I know, either with amazing talents or achievements or unbelievable life stories or just invaluable insights into areas which they have dedicated their lives to studying. I sit down with these amazing individuals from across the planet and I try to ask them questions that will hopefully help you, the listener, extract something valuable or learn something new or just hopefully get inspired by. You can find all the episodes for the podcast on all the major podcasting platforms such as iTunes, Spotify, Google, Overcast, iHeartRadio, literally all of them. It's there. If you love the show, if it adds value to your life in any way, shape, or form, please leave reviews on iTunes. It really helps grow the podcast. It puts it up there so more people can see it. You can also find all the episodes and everything else, all the information that's updated regularly on the website, which is roybensv.com, ROYBENTZVI.com, and you can sign up for updates as well. Also been updating the YouTube channel, so I've been uploading old episodes pretty much on a daily basis, so you can find it there. And in the future, I hope to make video podcasting as well. If that's something you guys want to check out and are interested in, please shoot me email. I'd love to hear from you. And also make sure to check out the social media platforms, Instagram and Twitter. I post there daily. And lastly, if you guys want to support and help grow the podcast, please go to Buy Me a Coffee or Anchor or Patreon. It is an endeavor to grow this podcast and make it what it should be. And it takes a village. So I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. I see that there are literally listeners from all over the world in each and every country. So thank you to everyone, and on to the show. Hello, folks. Thanks for tuning in on yet another episode. This week, I have Ted Ryce. Ted is a leading personal trainer, peak performance health coach, and podcaster. His podcast is the Legendary Life Podcast. And Ted's story is pretty incredible. I don't want to give you all the details right on the intro, but he has gone through tragedy after tragedy. And instead of doing what some people do in these dire situations, he turned his life around. He became a fitness coach. He dedicated his life to working out, to helping others, to creating change, starting a podcast, just doing as much good as he could in his space. And I really wanted to have him on because I think especially nowadays we need some inspirational people. We need to hear some inspirational stories. And there's not a lot of more inspirational stories than Ted, because again, some of the things he's gone through would crumble even the strongest of men. So I was happy to have him on and be open and vulnerable and share his story. And it was a great podcast. I'm sure you guys are going to love it. So without further ado, I want to introduce this week's guest, Ted Ryce. Enjoy the episode, everyone.
The Genuinely Interested Podcast.
Hey, Ted.
What's going on, Roy? Thanks for having me on your show, man.
Dude, what are you talking about? I've been so excited to have you on. I honestly, since I read some of your tweets a few weeks back, I've been so pumped to have you on the podcast. So thanks for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure, man. It's what I do.
Getting people pumped.
And that's it.
So where are you right now? Because I can't follow. It was I think it was Thailand, and then in the U.S. and now you're where, in Brazil?
Yeah, I'm in Brazil. I've been jumping around a bit. I was born and raised in Miami, but the past 3 years I've been doing the digital nomad thing. Even during the coronavirus last year, I got stuck in Medellin, Colombia, which is a beautiful place, by the way.
Not
Very
a bad
nice
place
people.
to get stuck.
Yeah, people are amazing there. I was kind of going into it not knowing what to expect because Medellin actually has a bad reputation
Hmm.
because people watch Narcos on Netflix, but you go there now and people are, I mean, just it's a great, one of my favorite places that I've been to. But now I'm in Brasilia, Brazil. So that's the
Ooh,
capital. It's like
capital.
the Washington D.C. of
Yeah.
Brazil.
But it's counterintuitive a little bit, I feel like, because Brazil is known for its amazing beaches, and Brasilia is kind of like it's inland, right? Like you don't get the beautiful Brazilian beaches.
It's beautiful here, and it's very green. It's well manicured. It's taken care of. But yeah, you really have to. It's more about going out to eat, malls. So and people come here to work for the government. Government jobs are, they get paid very well. And
Really?
so people come here for that. People come here to go to school. There's a lot of good schools. I'm here because I have some friends here, and also I've been doing some medical stuff. There's very good doctors here as well. Had a colonoscopy, all these things that I was supposed to do years ago. So I'm just taking care of some of my business in that way right now. But I'm off to the beach very soon. I'm going to be headed to Florianopolis.
Ooh, beautiful. That's in the southernmost tip of Brazil.
That right. It's on the coast. I guess
Yeah.
it's not quite. It's far further south than where I am now. I'm kind of central, but it's on the coast. It's supposed to be beautiful. I've never been,
I've
so
been. It's beautiful.
it's beautiful, huh? I'm really
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
forward to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like in 2016. Sorry, in 2006, I did a trip through North America. I started in like Argentina, then went to Chile, then went up all the way like the coast of Brazil, and then I took a bus ride from I think it was Salvador, if I'm not mistaken, like a
Mm,
4 day bus trip into Bolivia. So like all through like Brazil and like the jungle and shit. It was the worst bus ride of my life. It was literally 4 days on this rickety old bus through like dirt roads, but the experience was beautiful. But Florianopolis was the first stop when we came over from Argentina. We crossed through like the Iguazu Falls, and then
mhm.
we went into Florianopolis, and it is absolutely gorgeous. So you're gonna love it.
Oh, I can't wait, man. And yeah, what you said about the bus, people don't realize in the States um, the way other people live outside of the States. And it's just an experience that can really give you more empathy. It can also put into, I feel like in the States right now, people feel so, I mean, anxiety is higher than ever, especially with the millennials, right? Anxiety is the highest it's ever been. Depression is the highest it's ever been. Rates of suicide are high. Um, people are having less sex, both the older generation and the younger generation. Two-thirds of people are obese or overweight. There's a lot of metabolically unhealthy people. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and you can stay at home and social distance and wear your mask and get vaccinated. But the truth is, that's one side of the coin, and you should pay attention to the things that medical professionals are telling you. But even a lot of people are dying from heart disease and cancer too, and definitely taking care of your health is really crucial.
Yeah, the COVID, I think, exposed a lot of flaws in previous systems and current systems that we have, and that's why when they closed down gyms initially, I'm not a big gym guy now, although now I have been going, but I've been doing martial arts for close to 2 decades now,
Cool.
and I was like, this is something people should. I mean, I guess you have to figure out a way, which now they did, right? But to close gyms, something where people can go get fit, can be healthier, can let off the stress of COVID and just all these different things, and you close that, but you allow like the fast food chains to be open, and people can go to a drive-through and get a McDonald's. It's just like the whole process. I think like when we look back, we're going to realize these politicians had no fucking idea what they were doing, and they failed miserably. Although some countries obviously did a much better job. There's some countries that did amazing, but in the US and in a lot of, major Western countries, they failed miserably. It was horrific.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So I'm from Miami, and we grew up with big catastrophes happening more regularly than other places because of the hurricanes. I went through a major hurricane in 1993. Hurricane Andrew destroyed everything. And what you kind of learn from living in Miami and dealing with these catastrophes that are, it's always a matter of time before another hurricane comes. It's
Yeah.
never like, oh gosh, oh yeah, I wonder when, hopefully that never happens again. No, it's going to happen again, right? Cuba gets slammed all the time. The Dominican Republic gets slammed all the time, and the Keys get slammed. And it's only a matter of time before one of those hurricanes sneaks its way and hits Miami or South Florida, or one of the other states. Right? Texas had a huge issue. Um, Other states have had issues. North Carolina, I believe. Don't really know much about those situations, but I can tell you from Miami what the government does there is that every time something is looming like a hurricane, you never know what's going to happen. And so what they do is they drive up panic. They drive up panic so that people take action and take it seriously. Because there's always a lot of people who just, it's not going to, it's not going to happen. Because a lot of people live in denial. People are hoping, people are praying, right? And so for me, when this whole thing happened, I agree with you. I think we're going to look back and I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert, so you shouldn't be saying, "Well, I heard this kind of podcast said that we
Yeah.
overreacted." I'm
Yeah.
not the guy to really quote for that, but just if you're asking my opinion, for sure, we'll look back at it and see what we could have done better, for sure. But I kind of feel like it's been, overinflated. That said, Roy, I'm here in Brazil right now, and Brazil is, I believe, the second worst place. I'm not really paying attention to the numbers,
It's
but
in the top 5. Yeah.
it's in the top 5, right? And there was a story recently where in Manaus, which is near the Amazon, right? Everyone, I don't know about everyone else, but I thought just all of Brazil was a jungle, but it's not. It's only Brazil is a huge country, and
Massive.
it's only the northern part where the Amazon is, and Manaus is the city that's near there. And because of the situation there, they didn't have enough ICU beds, they didn't have enough oxygen. People were dying. It was a sad situation. And in the south, Rio do Sul, which is near Florianopolis, which is like I'm kind of watching the numbers.
Yeah.
They had situations where a woman was waiting for an ICU bed, and they didn't have one, and so she ended up dying the next day. And so it's really hard to know. And I think, to your point, we're only going to know after. And but I definitely agree. Nobody knows like the numbers and everything. It's just not something that you should read 5 minutes a day or a couple times a week, and then focus on what you can control. That's what my message is really about. It's like, focus on what you can control. Let the people who are running the government do it, but arguing about it on Facebook or Twitter, arguing doesn't, it's like, what's your ROI on your behavior?
Yeah.
Is a lot of the message that I have. And if saying things on Twitter, if the governor of your state isn't, oh well, J Bob 175, said we should open it up.
I should take this into account. I should do a
Yeah,
meeting, like, bring the board in.
yeah, exactly. So if that's not happening, what can you control? And we're in this situation where a lot of people, I mean, we're in one way, we're living in a very tough, crazy, uncertain time. In another way, there's all this opportunity that people aren't taking advantage of. And so one of my jobs is that I feel compelled to do is like, come on, let's focus on what we can control. What can you do? You can take care of your health. You can stop using social media to argue, complain, or whatever. You can, you know, you can start to follow people who are trying to promote a positive message. And so just taking responsibility and doing things that focus on your day-to-day life. It's where you have the most power to make an impact.
Yeah. And I mean, I always say that the most interesting people are the ones with the craziest life stories. And that's if you put me in a room with a bunch of different people, like I try to look for someone who's I don't know, been in the trenches, is gone through something in life. And I always connect better with those type of people just because I don't know, they seem to possess certain layers that maybe someone who hasn't gone through certain things just doesn't have. So when I read your thread a few weeks back, I was like, all right, I have to talk to Ted. Like, this is an absolutely unbelievable life story. And, I'll be honest, I was like, I don't know. Like, I was like, these are very personal questions that I want to ask. And it's, I think like if it was someone else, maybe I wouldn't feel as comfortable because you're so open about it and because you are who you are. I feel more comfortable, and I think people can connect with it on a much deeper level. So that's one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on. So I want to chop this up in kind of like three different ways. I want to like maybe at the beginning kind of talk about your life and your journey and what you went through, and then would after that talk a little bit about the working out as part of kind of a quote unquote therapy, and then the current situation we're on. I know we're a little bit limited on time. Hopefully we can crunch it all in. If not, we'll definitely do like part number two. But maybe we can kind of start with I think it was the first tweet about your mother, right? She passed away when you were about 14. And yeah, maybe learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So the story, right? Well, a lot of people, I know we just connected over Twitter recently. So I've been in the fitness business for a long time. A lot of people know me as a personal trainer earlier. And I've worked with the celebrities like Richard Branson, Robert Downey Jr., Ricky Martin when I was living in Miami Beach. And, a lot of CEOs of companies you probably wouldn't know, but very high net worth individuals. But the story of like how I got there, because a lot of people when they met me, they're like, "Oh yeah, you were like the captain of the football team, or maybe not the captain, but you're some like, you're doing well. Probably a lot of girls wanted to date you. You probably made money very easily. Yeah, everything's been so nice. Like just roll out the red carpet,
Sure,
right?"
yeah.
And that wasn't my case at all. I was not popular. I had a lot of, like you mentioned, tragedy. My mother was actually mentally ill, and my father had to divorce her when I was 4.
Oh wow.
And very unusual in the 80s for a father to take the kids away from a mother. That just shows you how ill she was. And then when I was going into high school, she ended up dying in a car accident, and really kind of sent me down a dark road in high school. I was doing a lot of drugs, got into trouble. Luckily, only got arrested a couple times, not for all the things that I did. By the way, it was nothing violent, but I did
Yeah.
destroy property, do drugs, skip school, was barely made it through high school. But I had to be in a special program called Severely Emotionally Disturbed, which I can't disagree with that being my emotional state at the time. But when I got to college, I got my parents. Also, there's another story there. They were alcoholics. They were high functioning alcoholics. Both were attorneys. But I got in, and we had a lot of clashing because it was my stepmother and my dad. And they ended up putting me in. They were like, listen, we're not going to put you on the street, but you can't live here, right? Because we just clashed too much. So I had a lot of problems with the way they drank and didn't take responsibility for their actions. I mean, that's how I say it now, of course. I was just a pissed off 18 year
Yeah.
old, right? At the
And that's not
time.
how you see when you're 18.
No, you're like,
Yeah.
fuck you, right? So that was kind of how it was. But so they put me in a place. I started going to community college because I couldn't get, my grades were so bad, I couldn't get in anywhere else. and I started taking control of my life. I started like, oh, I'm away from the toxic environment that my parents were in, and I started having control over my life. I wanted to study neuroscience, so I was doing all these math and science courses, really enjoying it, and I started doing well in school for the first time in my entire life.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh, I'm not stupid. If I do things, I can be good at them. But it wouldn't last too long. When I was 19, just a year and a half, I think, into the college journey, because I started a bit earlier to catch up, to try to make up some lost time. My 9-year-old brother, went missing, and um, the the what we ended up finding out, I mean, there's a whole story behind that, but what we ended up finding out, that he was kidnapped, he was raped, he was murdered that day he went missing, and it became national news. You can look up the story. Jimmy Ryce, RYCE is the last name, and they made a true crime story about him, and about his case, and they even have someone portraying me in it. I didn't see it till so many years later, but just to give you an idea of just it was one of those stories that was so terrible that they made it into a story. What happened to me was that it just basically, after going through all the other tragedies, growing up in a highly dysfunctional home, having a mentally ill mother who, I say she died in a car accident, but it was not clear whether it was a suicide or not. It was a really tough, she was going through a really tough situation. And then I was just starting to pull my shit together, and then this happens. And when you, the thing about that's different, it's because we can get to my sister's suicide in a second, but the suicides, the dying from cancer, the heart disease, the died in a car accident, those things are terrible. They're tough to deal with. But when someone murders another person, murders one of your family members, it's just a whole nother level of not just emotions that come up, but there was a whole trial. He ended up being on death row for 20 years, was executed, I think 2013, I believe, or 2014. I can't remember. But, all these things come up. So
Did that give you any relief? I mean, did you feel anything when he was executed? Like anything at all? Were you ambivalent? Were you at a point where you just didn't care anymore, or was it a weight that lifted? Or
yeah, it's a good question, and it's not the first time I've been asked. So what happened was so that happened in 1995, September 19th. I'm sorry, September 11th. Interestingly enough,
yeah,
1995 is when
yeah,
my brother was kidnapped and murdered. And in 2000, I'm kind of bad with dates about this, but it was either at the end of 2012 or 2013. My sister ended up committing suicide, and then the February following is when he was. It was like, okay, enough with this. We're this family's been through enough. They pushed it through and put this guy. They took him off death row and they put him on. They yeah, well, lethal injection, and
yeah.
so I had a front row seat to it,
Oh
and I was
wow.
with my dad. Yeah, I went and watched. I felt like if I was going to be the one to support this idea that I should go and experience it, and I should represent my family there, and represent my brother who was killed, my stepmom who ended up dying of a heart attack in 2009, and then my sister who committed suicide. I wanted to represent them and be there for that experience. And to answer your question, at the time, I mean, and I can even talk a little bit more about how my feelings have changed over time. But I feel like, it's so interesting because true crime stories are so popular right now, right? And I
So
lived
popular.
this true crime story, and to see how popular it is, it's like, guys, What are you doing here?
They're
But
churning out a new murder mystery on Netflix like every other week.
I know it's so interesting and kind of concerning for me. But I went through this for 20 years. It's like hung over me, like this guy in prison. Should they kill him? Should they just leave him? Should they? My dad wanted him dead, and my stepmother, Jimmy's mother, he was my half brother. Although I don't, technically speaking, I didn't consider him to be anything but a brother.
Yeah.
But yeah, we watched it, and watching him, you have this. If you hear this story or read about it, you have this idea like, man, this guy was a Hannibal Lecter, like mastermind villain type of guy, right? And I think we have that. At least I had this idea about people who do things like that in society, like they're really evil and they're like evil, really planning and plotting things. And while the planning and plotting things might be true, I saw a balding, and by the way, I'm losing hair, so I know this isn't audio, only audio, but not trying to hate on the balding men here. But I saw just like a balding, weak, like kind of loser guy, right? He wasn't like a Bane from the Dark Knight or some evil supervillain. He was just a messed up guy, and he paid the price for what he did. 20 years in prison and ultimately losing his life. And it got me thinking, like, what causes people to go to want to do things like that? So to answer your question, I felt better afterward. I didn't know how I was going to feel, but the day after, the day after he was executed, we ended up talking to the media because there was a lot of media coverage of my brother's situation. My parents even ended up meeting with Bill Clinton when he was a president, and also George W. Bush when he was president, to help push laws through. And so I didn't know how I was going to feel, but I felt better. And then after that day, after it happened, sorry, not after the day, but after it happened, we both made our statements to the media. We went out for a hamburger in Gainesville, Florida, and it was just this surreal moment with me and my dad. And I don't want to say I took pleasure in his death. That would be the wrong thing to say. Just not accurate is what I mean. But I felt like a weight off my chest. Now, I've since sort of found forgiveness for the guy, right? And it's not that I'm would forgive him and think that it's okay what he did. I don't, but I'm starting to realize the things that go wrong in people's lives that lead them to roads, down paths in their life that you and I mean, what would it take for you to kidnap, rape, and murder a kid? I mean, I can't even fathom what would even put that idea in my head, right? And so part of what
I think you have to be a sick. Like there's things perhaps in life that I could go through that would make me, I don't know, use heroin or commit murder or do something insane, right? That would just like that people on the fringe of society do, and sometimes not in the fringe. But I feel like there's certain things that are just so reprehensible. There's no forgiveness. There's no coming back, right? If you, at least this is how I see it. If you kidnap, rape, murder a child, there's no coming back. There's no retribution. There's no course correction for you to be a member of society again. Like that's an act that once it's done, you're done. Like you should be cast away, shunned away from society. That's how I see that specific act. And there's other things where I'm, if you commit certain things, like you can be rehabilitated, you can go back into society, but there's certain things where, it's off with their head.
Yeah. And I felt like that, and to some degree still do. I will say this. I mean, with people who say things like that, I totally understand. I also totally understand who people are like, because when I came out and said what I said about after he was executed, people are like, "Oh, the government should never take someone's life, never ever." I'm like, "Well, that's nice for you to say, but it's an
Yeah.
intellectual discussion for you. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, let's discuss this thing that I have no personal experience." And when you kind of go through it, it makes you. I mean, certainly my parents would agree with you, and I would agree with you that right now, where we are in society, we don't have the means to rehabilitate someone like that. They're too damaged, and there's just nothing you could do. But I will. What I kind of took away from it is that, and learning about these things, because although I'm not familiar with any data on like child sexual assaulters who also kill their victims. But we know that a lot of these people ended up having sexual abuse in their childhood. They had dysfunctional homes. They had all these things going wrong for them. They actually, what's really interesting about rapists, and not to turn this in, we could definitely change the subject in a bit, but just to kind of take things in a more light direction. But just to
No, man.
finish,
Yeah.
it's like a lot of them were also exposed to a lot of violent media growing up. Now, is it one thing? Is it another? Is it genes? It's probably everything. But some people seem predisposed to something going wrong, and going down roads that none of us would ever imagine, like we ourselves would go down.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I don't presume to understand it. But there are a lot of people that go through very difficult things, like yourself, and become, pillars of community, become examples, do great things. And then there are people that, go through really bad things, and my heart goes out to them. Like, I don't want anybody to suffer, not to that extent. But once you commit that, like, if you can find someone that went through something like that and then fix them or help them before they commit something, that's obviously the goal. But like, there's certain things that, again, like, once you do them, and this is just my point of view, this isn't obviously a consensus. It's just, there's no recourse. There's no way for them to get back into normal society, I feel. So yeah, it's a difficult one. There's so much to unpack with everything that you said. Like, I feel like that's like a whole other that's like a whole other podcast. Like, my head is just like bursting with questions. But
Yeah.
I want to, and again, like, we'll definitely do like like another episode. So your sister, I think you said, when you were 36, she committed suicide, correct?
Yeah,
Is
36.
is that, was she, maybe, because I know mental illness, it can, go through, it can be genetic and can, like,
Hmm.
transfer on to the next generation. Is that something that she suffered from, or was she maybe going through like a difficult period in life, or maybe it had to do with all the other events that kind of led up to that moment?
Yeah, it's a good question. And certainly, there's a genetic component to these things. But what we're starting to realize is that the saying goes, genes load the gun, the environment pulls the trigger,
Wow,
right?
interesting.
Genes load the gun, environment pulls the trigger. Same thing. It's not just with mental illness, by the way, it's with Alzheimer's disease. There's a community in Africa where these people have this high incidence of Alzheimer's, this gene that leads to Alzheimer's, but a really low rate of Alzheimer's disease. So when we're talking about genes, we're talking about, if we're not talking about a full blown genetic disorder, like, what would be an example, Down syndrome, for example. There's
Yeah.
a genetic change in a person from birth is very different than everyone else, right? so if we're not talking about that, if we're talking about, oh yeah, everyone in my family is fat and I'm fat, right? It's got to be in the genes, right?
Yeah.
So she definitely had I mean, I don't know, right? We never ran a genetic test on her. Genetic testing is not a thing that is being done widespread, but we know that mental health issues run in the family. And but another thing is this, and one of the most frustrating parts of being in this amazing time that we're in is that we know more than we ever have about this stuff, which means we also know how much we're lacking, how much like, oh man, we just don't have a test to figure this out. But when it comes to genes, as I said before we got disconnected there, the genes load the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger. And my sister went through a lot in her life, right? And she got hung up on some things too. She had a major like psychotic break when at the end there for sure. And man, let me tell you, it was so tough to not. It was really tough to lose her. But what I take away from all this, just to make it more to make it a little bit less about oh, this terrible story, because I've traveled around the world. I could tell you a lot of worse stories than mine, right? Like in Cambodia, right? The genocide that happened there. People have stories that are way worse than what I went through. But what I'll tell you is this: you really got to focus on health, and not just the health of your body, but the health of your mind, the health of your relationships, the health of your environment. And some people are just people who are in poverty, unemployed, living in poverty, or maybe employed but living in poverty. It's really tough to get out of that without help. But if you're middle class and up, right? Like, I got into an argument about this on Twitter, actually. I said, if you blame big food, big pharma, big healthcare for your health problems, you need to maybe consider taking big responsibility. And people argue with it. It's like, look, if you didn't eat the junk food, the business would go out of business. I'm not saying they're good people doing great work in the world. All I'm saying is this: it's like if businesses need supply, I'm sorry, need demand. I mean, that's why businesses are going out of business right now. It's because they don't have the demand. People aren't buying stuff from them. And it's like, if everyone stopped buying junk food, the junk food business, it wouldn't go out of business, because I'm sure they're very smart people business wise. They'd pivot.
Yeah, they'd
right?
adapt.
Healthcare would adapt.
Yeah.
But people blame doctors and everything. And certainly there's responsibility on their part, but just pointing the finger all the time, I think it's such an American thing to do as well. Like, you made me angry. I was scrolling through Twitter. Everything was fine. I came across your tweet. You ruined my day. And it's like, right.
Yeah. It's Ricky Gervais has a funny joke about that where like he says like, oh, I have 10 million followers, and then I'll put a tweet about something, and then someone will just like go berserk as if like I personally was attacking them. He was like, that's the equivalent of like you going like walking through a town and then seeing an ad for something that you don't like, and then calling up the number and say like, I don't fucking need that. It's like, dude, it's not about you. There's 10 million people that follow me. Someone's going to get offended, or someone's not going to like the tweet. You just can't take everything that personal. And I actually saw that tweet. I believe I liked it because it's true. And not to say that, big pharma, big business, big, whatever it is, big oil, all the big ones, right?
Right. All the bigs.
Yeah. Even
right,
big tech,
for sure.
whatever it is, there is some culpability on their end. They have figured out ways to trick us, and they have figured out ways to tap into our psychological ways to get us to spend money on their stuff and spend more time on the platform. All that aside, there is some personal responsibility. There's something you have to, instead of blaming people all the time, which that's great and it's fun, right? Like it's become a national pastime, but you if you take responsibility, if you disengage from all that bullshit and just carve out time in the day to read books, work out, go on a run, focus on your business, focus on creating content, whatever it is that you do, right? Focus on family time. Your life will improve. And again, like I'm also at fault. Like I also do these things. It's not like I'm just saint, but I think that's the path forward.
Well, the thing is, in this situation right now, it's almost the same as, and most people who criticize big pharma, big government, or big pharma, big healthcare, they not all of them, by the way, but tend to be a little bit on the right, towards the right. I'm centrist. I don't vote.
Okay.
That's how it is. Love me, hate me. I'm the president of my life, and that's where all my energy goes. Right?
You're gonna get some hate tweets. Don't worry.
Oh, you know what? Let it come. I'll just probably block you, whatever. But it's okay. But however, and people want to fight to keep their belief system. That's okay. I'm not into that. Right? I'm not interested in convincing people. Right? I'm just shining the light. I'm not trying. It's okay if you don't agree with me. I'm not here to change your opinion. I'm just here to share my perspective. If you want to listen to it, great. If not, that's cool too. But I will tell you, as a coach, one of the two things that I deal with the most are, so we haven't talked about this, but what I do is not talk about all this heavy stuff, like, all the heavy stuff we talked about. What I do is I help people transform their body, right? I help them because I believe health is the foundation for success. Whether you're defining success as running a business, defining success as having a healthy family, health is that foundation. It allows you the energy. It allows you the peace of mind. It gets your brain works better when you're healthier. Everything works better when you're healthier. You spend less time sick. So that's what I do. So the main things that people struggle with are, number one, focusing on what actually works, right? That's the easy part. I've been spending my whole life figuring out what works for getting in better health, for losing fat, getting in better shape, and to do it without hurting yourself or adopting some crazy diet or cutting out all your favorite foods. I've got you there. But what ends up coming up for people is that as they start to implement these changes in their life, some people find it hard to do. Yeah. Oh, well, all of a sudden, I get invited to the social outing and, my friends are like, come on, have another drink. Right. And, or, I got into a fight with my wife, or one of my employees was, really acting up, or, I'm working for someone, my boss was being an ass today, or whatever it is. It's these things that throw us off, or sometimes it's even ourselves that throw us off. I had a client recently was like, he lost 7 pounds in a week, right? Which is really good. He's got a bit to lose, but then he plateaued the next week. And I was like, yeah, but if you still look at it, 7 pounds in 2 weeks, even though you lost it in the first week, that's really great. People would love to be in your situation. But because it was day after day after day of looking at the scale and not seeing it going down, and this guy's a successful entrepreneur. He's doing well, okay? Mm-hmm. Right? Not the wealthiest guy around, but he's, has got $1 million business. I haven't asked, but I know, he's doing in the 7 figures, right? His business. And this guy's struggling with like the number on the scale. And I'm like, do you invest? Yeah, of course. And that's not my big thing, but I invest. I'm like, cool. So do you freak out? Do you look at the stock market and freak out every day? You're happy when it's up. You're sad when it's down. It's like, no, I know I've invested in the right things. And over time, it's gonna go up. I'm like, then what's the struggle here? Because you're going in the right direction. And that's really an analogy for what so many people deal with. They're sabotaged by their own negative thoughts. Again, could be other people in your environment, negative influences, could be a lot of things. But the potential all of us have is so amazing and great if we're not living in poverty. That, I believe, for me, is the cutoff. I think there's enough data to show, like, if that's where you're at, if you're living in the hood, people are getting shot, walking down the street, and you can't get a job because you know, your dad was in prison, your mom's on drugs, and then you ended up in prison. That's for me is a different situation. But if you're doing all right, if you had enough money to throw away on a college degree,
Yeah.
and get a degree in, like, I don't know, underwater basket weaving and men's, women's, whatever the liberal arts degree, right, is,
Yeah.
it's like you have the ability to make major changes in your life. And so why are we so focused on why are we so focused on what we can't do, or everything that all the other people are doing? Why aren't we focused on ourselves and trying to work with that?
Yeah. It's a weird time right now, and I've tried to bring this up on a clubhouse room the other day, and people weren't too interested. To people were they disengaged from it, but eh, people do not want to have uncomfortable conversations right now
Mm,
about a lot of topics that maybe are controversial, maybe are not politically correct, maybe there's my feelings are facts type of um, narrative happening right now, where if you feel a certain way, then that's your lived experience, and those are concrete facts. When the reality is, they're not. Um, you know, and we are. I don't know. We want to be as inclusive as possible, which is great. We should definitely do that, but we shouldn't. We shouldn't. I'm trying to stay clear of the landmines. We should not, it's just as an example, right? If you're putting people that are 400 pounds on a magazine poster,
oh
and saying
yeah,
that
Cosmo
that's
did that recently.
that's
Yeah.
just as healthy as, and again, like, I don't think the super skinny models that don't have an ounce of fat on them and all you see is bones is healthy as either. That's
Yeah, they're
also
on the
not
cocaine
healthy.
champagne diet.
Yeah,
Ugh.
exactly. Not healthy either, and not something to be promoted. But to say that a 400-pound lady is healthy, I mean, you can put her on. That's fine. But to say that
Yeah.
that is an aesthetic that someone should strive for, to say that she's just as healthy as someone who works out and eats correct, and it's blatantly false, and it's something that you should, and it's irresponsible. People should not think, oh, okay, like, yeah, that for me to be fat and not get off the couch and eat whatever I want, that's a good lifestyle as well. That'll probably make me flourish. No, it's not. So there's just a lot of information being put out there, right, to shield people from facts. Like, oh no, we understand you. Let's put out this information so you can feel better about yourself. But sometimes, uncomfortable conversations need to be had.
I agree with that. And I think in general, that's the situation. There was, I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, but, and we keep referencing Twitter, but I really like the
Well,
platform right now.
is there a world outside of Twitter? I don't know.
I know, right? Does
That's where I take my dog for a walk. That's where I
yeah.
go eating. It's all on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, there was this thing going around. Exactly. Right. Right. So there was this thing going around where people were talking about killing baby Hitler. Like it was a thing.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah. And then someone said, listen, everyone wants to go back and kill baby Hitler, but nobody wants to go back and like spend the time to raise him in a way that he ends up not doing any of those horrible things. And it's just kind of speaking to where we're at as a society. Like we want to like, let's not figure out how to raise him right. Just take him out, right? Even
Yeah,
if it
yeah.
means killing a baby, right?
I thought that was a
It's like,
very interesting perspective on that, because if you would have asked me, I would have probably said, yeah, like, just as an
yeah, take him
instinct,
out,
yeah, take him out. And then when
drop
he
him on
wrote
his
that,
head. It's
yeah, just, I don't
horrible.
know,
Sorry,
dude,
I'm just
what?
joking. I
Yeah,
love babies, but
take a boot and just smash his
take a
head in,
boot.
whatever it is, right? But like I never thought of it that way, you know. I never thought of wait. So in theory, could if I, you know, because this is already hypothetical because I can't go back in time. But if I were to already go back in time, why wouldn't I want to? Because obviously he was a very smart. He was a genius, right? He was an evil genius, but he was a genius. And maybe he could have, if we were able to somehow course correct, he could have done maybe amazing things, right? Instead of the horrific things that he did. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe, right? And going back to some of the, we've already had similar conversations today about it. It's like, well, these people who end up doing these horrible things, not always, maybe not 100% of the time, but more often than not, they have terrible things that happen to them in their childhood. Right? They had terrible things that have happened to them in their childhood. And it's like, man, get yourself healthy, get your environment healthy, get your relationships healthy, right? One of the things that I end up doing with clients is like, I end up, I've had clients who start asking me for marriage advice. I'm like, man, you need to, I can offer you advice here, but the best advice is hire a marriage therapist. Find a good therapist, get into therapy. If you're dealing with stuff from your past, your childhood, and it's becoming an issue for you as a father or mother, like hire someone to deal with it. Going to the gym's not going to solve that. It's a good place to start, but it's not going to solve that. Do the work. And we don't, and to your point, we don't want to do the work. We want the easy thing all the time, and that's okay to want that, but it's giving us the results that we're getting right now, and which to me, I mean, it just could be a lot better, right?
Yeah.
And one of the messages I have is nobody's going to save you. People got so mad at Trump. Look, it's okay if you want to get mad at, or now people are mad at Biden on the other side. It's like, look, doesn't matter. I'll tell you this: I don't focus on politics, right, wrong. Certainly can make an argument that I should be more involved. Not there yet, so it is what it is. But I'll tell you, my life has gotten better every single year, right? Minus, obviously the setback with my sister and those types of things. But my year after my sister's suicide was tough, but that year that happened, right? But the following year, I launched my podcast, and my podcast changed my life, right? For the better. And it made me a better person. I had to have all these conversations. It was a pleasure to do, but I ended up having all these conversations. And so, we can find the silver linings, we can find the opportunities, and a lot of it has to do with taking care of your health to make sure you have the energy to go and do those things. But you can, when you start taking responsibility for your life and realizing nobody is no elected official, no, guru, right? It's all going to be on you. It's not to say you have to do it alone. You can ask for help. You can hire people to help. But at the end of the day, it's on you. It's the most powerful perspective I think anyone can take.
And I want to talk a little bit about how the journey of physical fitness started for you. When did you get into it? When did you know maybe that you want to take it from? Because a lot of people work out, right? But not everyone takes that to that next level where they actually want to make a profession out of it. So when did that hit?
Well, I dropped out of school at 19 and bounced around a couple years. Found myself in Miami Beach where my parents were living. And I had no job, had no opportunity. My parents were like, listen, you can stay with us for a couple days, but then you got to leave. They needed to do their own thing. And I was a college dropout. I had no opportunities, some experience, but not much, right? Tutoring math and a few other things that I did. But I scrambled to get a job. I met someone. I ended up staying in the building that my parents were staying in. Kind of funny because it was a building on Collins Avenue in Miami Beach in a place called Millionaires Row. A very nice building. I was broke,
Very
had no
Miami.
money. Yeah, exactly. It was a very nice area of Collins Avenue. And but I met a guy who was doing receiverships and bankruptcies. Ended up getting hired by him, and the place was in receivership. Ended up staying there, and I had a 1350 square foot apartment, not on the ocean side, but it was a big apartment, and I was paying $500 a month for it. And then
What?
I had yeah, people hated me, and I had a roommate, so I was paying $250 a month, and we could walk out to the ocean. The building was right on the ocean. It was beautiful. So I had the job there, and it was kind of rough because we didn't talk about this, but I would work there, and then I would go to a very infamous area of Miami known as Overtown. It's where like the German tourists take the wrong turn, ended up getting jacked or robbed or killed. I worked there for the better part of a year too. And in that whole process, I was so depressed with the whole situation, and also going and working in that neighborhood. It was really rough.
What were you doing there?
I was so the building was in receivership. I was collecting rent. I was giving 3-day notices, not eviction notices. That's what the government does. But I was giving 3-day notices, and it was entirely it was black. The whole community, right? It was a low income, predominantly black community, and here I am, a 21-year-old white dude, um, giving people 3-day. Actually, it was a great story, but it's like a whole nother podcast. But I ended up making friends with people. I did a lot of, well, I did the best that I could, being a dumb 21-year-old, and I did my best to make a difference. Ended up getting to the point where I would come back and I would go to the gym in this nice building I was staying. It was a really weird life because I would go to the hood, the ghetto, right? And then, and it's a rough one. It's like if I wouldn't stay there past when it got dark, right? That would not have been safe. And I was collecting rent too. It was just, I had money on me. It was,
you were a target.
It was a crazy situation. It was a big time target. I made friends though, but still, I mean, there's only so much people can do to watch your back. And so I'd come back from that, and I would go to the gym and work out. And I was just, and then after the workout, I would drink a lot of alcohol and smoke weed, right? To try. I was just had this crazy life where I was going to the ghetto, then coming back and living in this, multi-million-dollar building on the ocean. It was just so crazy. But in that building, there was a gym, and I met these people doing personal training. Never heard of that. Didn't know what it was. I thought I knew about bodybuilders, but I saw there's this Australian guy and this, I forget where she was from. I think it was Colombia maybe. And they were training clients. And I was like, what are you talking about? You have a job where you wear gym clothes and work with rich people to get them in shape. How much money are you making? They were making $75 an hour or $80 an hour at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get in on that, because I am working out all the time. And kind of a funny tangent is, when I went, I didn't have much money. I didn't have very many clothes. When I went to work in the ghetto, I was wearing Adidas warm-up pants and a white tank top, right? Or, tank tops and stuff. I was wearing workout clothes all the time. It was just such a crazy time in my life. But as soon as I heard that, I was like, I want in. I don't know how to do it, but I want in. Fast forward a bit. I didn't know, like, the receiverships and bankruptcies, it's a sketchy area. Didn't know if I was going to get paid by these guys, because the government pays them. I don't know all the details. I'm sure one of your listeners understands. I was 21. I just needed a job, needed to put food on the table. So I stopped doing it because it seemed like I wasn't even sure if I was going to get paid. I took what little money I had. I think I spent $500 and got my personal trainer certification. Had no experience. Went to places to interview in person. I think I got the ads from the paper, right? Because it was 1999 or 1998. And interviewed at a place called the Eden Rock Resort in Miami Beach. Now it was a hot place then. Now it's the Fountain Blue is really popular, but the Fountain Blue was kind of dead at that time. It was all about the Eden Rock. And I interviewed there, got hired there. My boss hired me because I was, a handsome dude, but he was like not going to put me on the floor and train people. I had to wait 2 years before I did that, but I didn't care. I needed a good environment to be in, and the other one was just not good. The craziness of the receiverships and going down to the ghetto, So man,
So
I started.
what were you doing there for 2 years? What did he have you do?
Well, I was getting to that. So I was cleaning up machines and putting away weights, and we would alternate between the cardio room uh, and the weight room. The cardio room was upstairs, overlooking the ocean, and the weight room was downstairs, overlooking the pool. Cool place. And I started training people when I was in the weight room. I didn't care. I just started training people for free.
Yeah.
Helping people, because it's like, what else am I going to do? I'm just walking around like nothing to do. And there wasn't like phones with the internet, so I could have been on my phone. So I'm really lucky that wasn't the case, because I had nothing to do. So I started training people. And within, I think, 1 or 2 months, people started asking for me to train, to be able to hire me. And so he made an exception. He's like, people are asking for you, so here you go. And then I started training people. And that was the entry into the fitness business.
It's a weird thing that we do now, right? It's like we're not bored anymore. Like boredom it doesn't exist. Like if you do not have something to do for literally 2 seconds, or if you're waiting in line somewhere or whatever it is, even in the gym, if you're finished the weights, the first thing you do is you're back on your phone, you're on Instagram, you're on whatever it is, emails. And back then, like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, if you were bored, you're like, shit, I got to do something. What am I going to do? And then you start thinking about things to do and you start acting on those. But like, that's dead. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's easier to distract yourself. It's easier. So had I had a smartphone with internet connection, I don't know what would have happened. But because I didn't, I had one of those Nokia phones. So the game sucked on them. I don't even remember if there was games. Snake, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I love that
So that I wasn't into it. So I started just training people, and I ended up meeting celebrities there. Ended up meeting local celebrities, people you wouldn't know. But then I ended up meeting Ricky Martin's manager was working out there. I ended up working with him. I worked with Pauly Shore. If anyone remembers that guy on TV. And ended up working with Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. before he did his first Iron Man movie. That was pretty cool. Ended up meeting people who would eventually introduce me to Richard Branson. And so I worked with Joan Branson for a while and got to meet Richard one time and train him. Yeah. It was Richard Branson. Yeah. I walked in. He wanted to meet super early. He was dressed in jeans and a white button-up shirt. I'm like, man, this guy's not. What's up with this guy? And then I walked in. He called me he's like, oh, well, aren't you a fit bastard? And that was kind of how he was cool, man. We had a good time. He was a good guy. Just a normal guy. Obviously, he's not. He's Richard Branson, but he didn't come across as some of the egos that you deal with in Miami Beach are really large. But he wasn't like that at all. He was like, like you walk in, oh, are you a fit bastard? Just, bantering, and he was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. He seems like it. There's people where you see them and you see them in the public eye, so you see them out in interviews and you think that they're probably okay, like they seem like down to earth, and then there's other people where you look at them and you're like, this person's probably a piece of shit. It's just like from the interviews and from I don't know all the other stuff that they do. I think it's authenticity. A lot of times there's people that are themselves and then you connect with them. And then there's other people that just try to make up a character of who they think people want them to be or who they want people to perceive them as. And that just doesn't fly, I think, a lot of times. But going back to working out, so essentially at that point, you've been doing personal training at this point for how long?
What you mean
At this
as of
point,
today?
yeah.
Oh, I don't even do you would it would be expensive to hire. I don't do personal training anymore. But the whole health and fitness thing, like
Okay.
I've been doing it for, since I was 21 years old and I'm 44 now, so 23 years.
You
But
still do like one-on-ones, maybe not like actual like personal training, like but like consulting and stuff like that. No.
sure, sure,
Yeah.
sure. No, this is my business right now. Things are in transition. I'm gonna put coaching on kind of the back seat, and I got rid of my group training program. I only take one-on-one clients right now, and the goal is to do more writing and things like that. Be more of an influencer. I'm gonna be an influencer now, Roy.
It's good, man.
Spending all my time
Look,
on
man.
social media.
It's look. I had a conversation the other day with someone about this, and I think we're at a time where whatever it is you're doing, you have to create media, like you have to create content. So it doesn't matter if you're an accountant, doesn't matter if you're in the fitness industry, if you're selling a CPG product, or if you're in tech, you have to we're in the creator economy right now, and you as a creator, you have to create stuff. You have to let people know, why should they follow me, why should they listen to me, why should they care about my industry, why should they listen to what I put out. And you have to educate people about it, and you have to get them involved and interested. So that's how it is now.
Yeah, agreed. And I've known that for a while. We created something that was, yeah, we were creating content and everything, but it was really to drive people into our whole coaching funnel.
Yeah.
And I could just do that and stay doing that, and not, I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to post on social media all the time. But I want to do it. I want to help more people, and at a more selfless level, I want to help more people. At a more selfish level, I play it in bands. I like to entertain. I like to have conversations. I like the social aspect. I don't. So I like that more. I loved coaching my clients. I got the best clients because they have to all have to hop on a call with me, and I have to pre-qualify them. So I know they're cool, but
Yeah.
but I don't. But I don't have to do this, but I want to do it because it's the way to help more people. You gotta get your name out there. But I have friends. They're coaches. They're running 7 or 8 figure businesses. You would not know them, and they want to stay that way.
Yeah.
Not
That's awesome.
interested.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like there's if you were able to build a, for lack of a better term, a fan base before
Mm,
because now any industry you go into because of the internet, it's saturated, right? For the most part, unless you go into something new, and even then, like it gets saturated so quickly. Just like I don't know, NFTs, like it's brand new, and then within a month, like there's all these people selling it already. So
what's an
if you,
NFT? I've seen that several times. I have no
uh,
idea. Haven't Googled it.
it's it's a non-fungible token, and
Okay.
it's a way for you to essentially tokenize anything. Art is the main thing right now, digital art, but they're saying it can essentially do. I think I saw that what's his name, Jack from Twitter. He sold his first tweet for $2 million through NFT, right? And then yesterday, you had an artist that sold a digital
People.
painting, yeah, for $69 million. So it's this new wave of digital currency, digital ownership through blockchain. I don't know enough about it to explain. I'm a novice in the area. There's people that are much more educated on this, but it's just it's interesting to see how new developments, how new technologies are popping up all over the place, and But as I was saying, like if you're lucky enough to have built sort of a fan base, for lack of a better term, before this kind of digital era arrived, and you have those core people that love you and they'll always follow you, That's amazing. But now it's getting, the competition's much harder.
More people are getting into it. I was looking at the stats on podcasts. Most people, I think like the 90% of people start them and then they quit, or they just
Yeah.
do some series, and it's just a kind of just a series thing. It's not something they're going to do. So, but I hear you, man. I mean, but there's always going to be competition. There's always a way, I think, to
No,
stand
competition
out.
is good. Competition's
Yeah,
fine. It's like you're a monopoly essentially, like because no one's gonna do a podcast,
yeah.
right? Like you're gonna do a podcast, and no one's gonna do, no one's gonna train exactly like you train. So you have your own specific thing that you do that's just a little bit different from someone else, and if people connect to that, that's amazing. That's all you need. You need those 1,000 people, those 1,000 super fans that are gonna love what you do. And again, like you can't, even if you try to copy someone else, it's not going to be identical. It's just not. You're going to have your flavor of things that you do. You're going to have your style, and it's just going to be a little bit different. So never, never not go into something because you're scared of the competition. Is my view.
I love it. Absolutely. If you have enough passion, just make sure you get good instruction.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
I would say.
That's something that I've actually wanted. There's so many. I don't know if you've been on Clubhouse much, but between mostly on YouTube, Clubhouse, Instagram, I guess as well. But there are so many of these hustlepreneurs and financial gurus, air quotes, that are just trying to sell people on so much. They're selling them this dream that they are this 8-figure, 7-figure business owner, and they can make you rich like so quickly. And if you just buy this course or this ebook, and there's just so many
Really?
of them. There's
Hmm.
so many of them.
Not good.
And again, if you are not, the thing about them is most of them, they're not really entrepreneurs. They're not really investors. The way they make their money is through selling you these things, right? The way they make their money is by selling you that the ebook, by selling you the
Yeah.
courses, by letting you go
I make
to
money by teaching you how to make money.
yeah, but they're telling, but it's false because they're telling you that they're actual entrepreneurs that have already
Right.
made 7, 8 figures when they haven't. And look, if
Sure.
you haven't made 8 figures, you can't tell someone else how to make 8 figures. It's just that's not how it works, right? Just like if you're not a personal trainer, and if you've never done any weights, and if you know shit about personal training, how can you teach someone about fitness, about health? Like if you just don't have that knowledge. And there are people out there that are very good, but there are a lot of snake oils, a lot of sharks out there that are just trying to, you know, just bait people into buying their courses. And that's the stuff that I really dislike. It rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, me too, man. I have a hard time with the health and fitness stuff. I see a lot of influencers out there. They're showing workouts. They look good. They look in shape. They are wearing nice, cool, color coordinated outfits, and just doing something that's just unnecessary. It looks great for social media, but it's just a waste of time. And but I look at it. I mean, to be honest, it's like whenever I say something bad about those people, it's like, well, I'm just saying this for you because, to be honest, all the keto craziness, all the low carb lunacy, it helps my business because people don't get results with it, right? Anything that where people don't get results, the more people that are out there promoting this nonsense that doesn't get results, I can counter market to those people. Say, hey, are you doing the burpee, jump, squat, push up combination for 3 minutes and 3 times a week, and you're not getting results like that person on that influencer on Instagram promised? Here's what you're doing wrong. And same thing with the I put up a post on Twitter that I don't want to say it went viral because it's really not viral for me. It's a couple hundred, comments and like
Hey
50
man, that's
retweets.
great.
But it got some traction,
Yeah.
um, and it was basically just, hey, you don't need to do low carb to lose body fat. You can, but you don't need to.
Mhm.
And there's principles that matter more than anything. And yeah, and there's enough people, and I find, here's the thing, I find that the people who gravitate towards my message tend to be, I hesitate to use the word smarter,
Okay.
but I'm going to go ahead and use it, more discerning in who
Yeah.
they believe in. Let's say it like that, because
Yeah.
it's like, oh man, that guy's jacked. He's
Yeah.
gotta, and he uses these words that I don't even understand. It's like,
Well, that's
yeah,
the
it
thing.
doesn't mean anything,
That's
you
the
know?
thing. There's so much. I don't know if it's information or misinformation because again, I'm not an expert on the matter. But when I listen to people talk, sometimes like it sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Like he's telling you a lot of different things and explaining how the body and metabolism and this and the other and the keto and they use a lot of like industry jargon. You're like, all right, this dude knows what he's talking about, and I can't, just as an ordinary person, like I cannot really decipher between the two, and I think most people can't, and that's what they're banking on. And I maybe like tell people like what are some ways that they kind of can maybe decipher like who's just try to sell you on a bullshit lifestyle
Mm.
and or like maybe some good people and like what are the ways that you can decipher between the two.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this, anyone with a best-selling diet book or anyone with a lot of followers, I hope to be an exception to this, but anyone with a lot of with a lot of, what do you call it? Social media credit, right? That
Yeah.
that currency, where it's just people are following them. They probably got there through marketing.
Hmm.
And all the diet book people that I know, that's their case, with few exceptions. If few exceptions are Tom Venuto, "Burn the Fat, Feed the Muscle" was a very well received and best-selling book. I don't know if it made any New York Times lists or anything like that, but that was a good one. Alan Aragon had a book. I forgot the name of it, but most of the books out there are just, they're well written. They capture your attention with storytelling. So but it's just, a lot of it just isn't true, or it's
Yeah.
misrepresented. For example, what would be a good example of that? I just don't even read this stuff anymore. So it's hard to come up with an example. But anyone who really gets your attention and you see has a huge following, be skeptical of. And again, I want to be an exception to this, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the people that I know that are exceptions, like Spencer Nadolsky, has a pretty big following on Instagram and Twitter. He's someone to follow. Jordan Syat, he was Gary V's trainer for a few years, and learned from him, learn marketing from him. He's solid, but when it comes to, I'm not going to name names, but
Yeah.
anyone who I haven't named here, they got a big following and a best-selling diet book. And I'm not saying they're wrong 100%, but if you ever run into one thing that I see people do, and this is a good point, another good recommendation, I think, is if you're following someone's recommendations and it's not working for you, and you're really giving it a good go, it's
Mhm.
probably not you. Most people that I talk to tend to internalize the failure and say, oh man, I've just got a messed up body. My hormones, my metabolism, my premenopause, my postmenopause, my andropause. But really, there's a way to get results no matter who you are. I don't care if you're 90 years old. In fact, there are studies, by the way, I'm not just throwing that out. 90-year-olds, they're building muscle and strength.
Wow.
Most of us won't make it there, by the way. But even if you do have the genes and the good fortune to make it there, and the good habits, most importantly, to make it there, you can still get results. And that's something to keep in mind. So if you're not getting results and someone has a lot of following, or if it just, you try to do it, it sounds so extreme, there's a way to make things work. And the way to make things work are really to understand the principles behind things, and then to apply those principles in your life.
Yeah. There was There was a guy I remember a few years ago. His YouTube ads were running everywhere. I forget his name, but he was a big like Asian dude.
Mike Chang, right?
I think so. And he was
No,
promoting. He
six
would,
pack shortcuts guy.
yeah. That guy.
Yeah,
And he was just sitting on the couch, like, you guys think I probably eat salad, and then he would have like pizza and burgers and like all this junk food, and I'm like, I don't think that works. I don't like I don't think that this dude is legit. And but he made a whole lot of money. He made a lot of money.
yeah.
And that kind of goes back to the people that are just, they're selling you lies. And then what they're doing is, and what you said is also correct. They When you fail, when you ultimately fail, because a lot of these programs, be it financial or relationships or Bitcoin or fitness, because they don't know what they're talking about, and when you ultimately fail, for the most part, they make you feel like you didn't invest enough. You didn't put as much time as you needed. And then you go away feeling like, oh, I failed. It wasn't them. It was me. I didn't do the work. And that's sad. It's sad that people leave their programs feeling that way and
Let
losing a
me
lot of
throw
money.
another one. Yeah, right. Let me
Yeah.
throw another one in because this is something I said the other day, and I think I'm actually going to do a podcast on it. But is that person that you're learning from in health and fitness, are they a coach? I'm a coach. I've been a coach for years. I've been a coach before Facebook was invented.
Yeah.
Before, I've been a coach before all this for 23 years now. And I have testimonials of clients, not just before and after photos, but interviews with clients, and they explain um, how they got results with me, right? So is that person a coach or are they an influencer? Because I see what a lot of influencers say, and it's unreasonable to ask everyone to do that or to say that's the way.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's unreasonable to say, hey, well, if you want results, you got to hire a coach because most people won't be able to afford one unless you're unless you really unless you're doing well financially and again have the mindset to invest in yourself in that way.
Yeah.
So I understand both, but ask that question, because if you're reading something and they're telling you, okay, well, what are the real world results you have besides having a best selling book, which I'm looking to write a book. The first thing they ask, and to get it right, legit, like not my eBook, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To go through a publisher. First thing they want to know, because it's all about money, which is okay. But first thing I want to know, okay, how many followers do you have?
Really.
Yeah. How many followers do you have? They want people with an audience. It's not about the quality of the information. It's about the sellability. I don't know if that's a word, but the sellability, the marketability of not just the book, but also the person. So if you got a big following, it's going to be a lot easier for you to write a book. But if you're like, hey, listen, I got this game changing idea, it's going to change the world.
Mhm.
Maybe. But if you just have like, well, it's not necessarily going to change the world, but it's going to change a lot of lives. Let's say hundreds of thousands of lives, millions of lives, maybe.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. How many books is that going to sell us? And how many people do you have following you? Right? It's about that game, and it's okay. And to be honest, Roy, more people in my position who come from where I'm coming from a more science based background, a more in the trenches background, working with people for a long time, they need to learn how to get their message out there,
Yeah.
right? Need to
Yeah.
learn. And a lot of them are really resistant because I used to be one and know a lot of people. So they need to step up and figure that out as well. Just like people who end up falling prey to the whole, hey, just eat, just eliminate sugar 100%. Really easy. You want to get in shape? Just never, ever, ever eat sugar. When you're with your 8-year-old daughter and she's, Daddy, eat this piece of cake with me. Say, no, I don't eat sugar ever. Don't ever ask me. You know what I mean? Like completely ridiculous. You don't need to do those things. right? You don't need to do those things. So
That's good to know because I love cake. It's good to know.
I like ice cream, but it doesn't matter. You can make it work because
Yeah.
again, like principles, total calories. That's a principle. Dial in your protein. 1 gram per pound of body weight if you're normal weight, and maybe zero point 0.7 or zero point 0.8 grams per a pound of body weight per day. By the way, if you're overweight, lift weights and make sure you do right. There's
Well,
all
that's the
these
thing.
principles.
I feel how much of a Nazi do I have to be with myself with food because I I'll once in a while, or not even once in a while. Let's be honest. A few times in a while, I'll go and I'll have chips, or I'll have some beer, or I'll have an Oreo croissant or a cake, and like I enjoy. I try to like limit myself, but every time I eat it, I my senses are enjoying themselves, obviously, but I have this guilty feeling and I can't fully enjoy it because I'm like, fuck, like there goes my 1 hour of Muay Thai that I did yesterday, all on this fucking Oreo croissant right now. And how rigid do you have to be with yourself to get like and I don't I don't have to be a bodybuilder. I don't want to be a bodybuilder, by the way, at all. I don't actually don't
Me
like that
neither.
physique. I don't like that physique at all. I think they have a little bit of a body dysmorphia. They're really big guys because they look, their arms are so short. I don't think that's healthy. It doesn't look healthy. It looks a little weird. But just a good athletic tone, like like I think you posted a picture a while back, something like that. Like how rigid do you have to be with yourself to get those results?
Depends on the person, but it's I think it's the wrong it's a good question. I think it's the wrong question though. It's more
What's
like,
the right
hey,
question?
the right question is, hey, where should I start to fix? Because you don't know. It's like some people are gonna. Everyone wants to make money, but not everybody's going to do what it takes to
Mm,
make 6 figures. Not
yeah.
everybody who makes 6 figures is going to do what it takes to make seven. I don't want to have a 8 figure company because, well, now again, I don't really know much about. I'm not. You wouldn't want to hire me to coach you on business. I've learned a few things, but I've seen some of my clients who are 8 figure guys, and I don't want to do what they do. I want to enjoy. I'm more of the lifestyle entrepreneur. It's
Yeah.
like I got to work out. I got to get a massage or acupuncture. Got to take vacations. I have no desire to like be one of those people. Now I want to make money. I like nice stuff. So what I'm getting at is we all need to. So look, you want to get in shape. Don't worry about how strict you got to be. Get in the game and start playing. For example, and what I mean by that is specifics. Start tracking your nutrition
Okay.
and start tracking your nutrition. And don't say, you know what, I'm just going to track my nutrition for a week, right? Just to see what I'm eating. Because you can fit in the Oreo cookie croissant thing that you just said.
Oh,
You can
oh,
fit those things
it's
in.
delicious.
Is it really an Oreo cookie croissant?
Oh, it's unbelievable. They have like an Oreo cream in the middle, and the whole
Oh my God.
croissant is black. So like I guess they put it into the dough. Oh, it's unbelievable. There's like a
I would
bakery
eat,
that
go eat
that
one
does
of
it.
those
Oh, you have to. I have to send it to Brazil.
things. Dude, you don't have to be as strict as you think. That's like saying, but we all work with a budget, right? Just like every business has a budget, you have a budget with how much food you can eat. And you can spend some of the budget on Oreo cookie croissants, and you can spend some of the budget and probably most of the budget eating lean protein and that type of thing. And another thing is this, it's not about saying no and restricting all the time. It's about managing your hunger. And people don't know how to do that. It's one of the reasons why keto and low carb is so popular because uh, ketones can help. I've never been there, but I've read, right? I've seen the research on it. Ketones being in ketosis, all that, oh, you're burning more fat if you're in ketosis. No, you're using fat for fuel, but ultimately the total calories are what really matters. And that's why you see overweight keto people. But one thing that does happen when you're using fat for fuel when you're in ketosis is that a lot of people find that their hunger is less. So they're able to stick with it because they're less hungry. But I could show you, I teach all my clients right now. There's a great thing, and you can even Google this, the Satiety Index. It shows lists of foods, 5 different categories: protein, carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, fats, and what are called hyperpalatable foods. And this is something I show all my clients. Look, here are the foods that it's just one study and not applicable. And, it's just one study, but we can use it as a foundation. I use it as a foundation for my clients and say, hey, listen, look at this, look at these foods. Do you see how protein, the red meat and the white fish, they scored off the charts with with helping with satiety? Boiled potatoes help with satiety, but then you also see
What
so boiled potatoes.
what's
Yeah, go
satiety?
for it.
Sorry. No, I just wanted to say what's satiety?
What is satiety? Yeah. So that's a good point. I'm always struggling with these words sometimes, like how to make it, but it satisfies your hunger.
Okay.
Foods that satisfy your hunger. Satiety is like how satisfied are you after you eat something?
Okay.
And we all know, actually, very interestingly, on this chart that I'm talking about, the thing that scored the lowest. And when we're talking about the thing that scored the lowest, we're talking about donuts, cakes, jelly beans, right? All the way up to fruit and those types of things. The thing that scored the lowest was croissants.
No.
So, so but here's the thing: if you're going to eat a croissant, it's not going to help you feel satisfied.
Yeah.
So it's okay because I love croissants. I mean, who doesn't love bread, buttery bread? And then you're talking about stuffing it full of Oreo cookies and cream with the cookie dough baked into the bread. That sounds amazing. But I know if I eat one of those, here's the thing: I've got ice cream in my fridge right now. I know if I'm hungry and I start eating the ice cream, there's not going to be enough of that ice cream that makes me satisfied. It just doesn't work. And that's why the whole carton disappears. But if you eat foods like, for example, my lunch today, it's going to be some fruit, some white fish with almonds. I've got this frozen food that I've been buying here in Brazil. And so I'm going to make this meal and it's going to make me feel satiated. It's going to make my hunger go away. And if I want some ice cream, I'll be able to manage myself afterward. That said, there's probably people that need to go cold turkey for a little bit. If you feel like, crazy with food, if you feel like you could do what I just said, you could eat a meal and feel full, and then you couldn't moderate, you probably need to kind of retrain your brain. And by the way, you're not addicted to food, right? You've got a habit, you're distracted by food, but it's not addiction. And there's a way to manage that. You don't need therapy. Might need coaching, but you don't need therapy. It's these foods, that's what they do, right? They just trigger something in your brain, and that doesn't help you feel it. Like, again, you could eat one of those croissants and you're like, oh, I'm hungry, but it was 500 calories that you ate. But you could have a 300-calorie meal full of protein, vegetables, and some potatoes even, and it would make you feel full. Did I
Yeah.
explain that well?
No, 100%, man. And I mean, I
Cool.
guess we're hardwired to and and quote unquote addicted to salt, sugar, fats because just that's been part of our evolution. But I wonder, Jocko, right? He's
Jocko Willing, sure.
yeah, yeah. So I feel like with him and there's a few of the other guys that are just hardcore motherfuckers, right? Like David Goggins and a couple of others. And with them, it seems like it's 100 or 0. There's no middle ground. And like he'll wake up every day at 4:30 in the morning and work out like a maniac. And then he doesn't eat cake, he doesn't eat sugar. And like and that's what he preaches because that's the lifestyle that he leads. And I don't know if that works for 99% of people. Like
No,
for me,
it doesn't. for sure.
I think, yeah, like I think I eat, let's say 80-20, like 80% of the time I eat relatively well. And then 20% of the time I kind of just binge and I'll eat the chips and the beer and crap. And, but you have to have that, right? Like you have to enjoy life a little bit. Like you can't deny yourself sometimes some enjoyment, and not that working out and eating healthy is not enjoyable, but like, I don't know. I just don't know if that
Got to give into
100%
pleasure.
lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. And I wouldn't listen to Jocko. Who does he? I mean, I would listen to Jocko. Hey, how do I improve my leadership skills
Yeah.
to run my company? That's what he has,
He's
right?
very
That's what
inspiring.
it's very inspiring. But that's not someone who's probably worked with a lot of people to help them change their relationship to food. Or if it is, he's probably working with a bunch of guys that are former military or wish they would have been in the military. So you got to think about that. You got to think about those things. Not to say anything against him. It's great. Keep doing what you're doing. It's just, who are you learning from? A lot of people ask me about Tim Ferriss and some of the uh, things that he's said about getting in shape. It's like, well, I don't know. I would never look to Tim Ferriss to get in shape. I, you know, he's had guys like Chris Summers on his show. I've learned from Chris Summers. Chris Summers is a um, former gymnastics coach. I forget at what level, but he was the guy who helped or was part of why CrossFit has gymnastics in it. He's had Pavel Satsulin on his show. That's a guy worth learning from. But and not to say it's bad that if you learn something from him, it's just I'm me being an expert. I would just, if you're like, hey, well, what do you think about Tim's info? I would never learn from him. What is there to learn from him? Is he doing research now? Does he have a whole list of people whose lives he's changed? Oh, but through his book. It's like, yeah, but you can, anyone who writes any, if anybody does more exercise than what they're doing now, they're going to get results. If anybody reads something and eats better than what they're currently doing now, they're going to get results. But what I look for are, who are the world-class people who get results when, very other people can, either results that very few other people can, or get results in really hard situations. Those are the people that I like to learn from.
Yeah, I think that's, and again, I circle back to what we were talking about earlier. That's what it's a little bit harder to decipher, because nowadays it's hard to know who the leaders in most industries are, because it seems like the people who get the most eyeballs are the people that put the most money into marketing, and the people that their ads pop up the most on Instagram and on YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitter, etc. And you kind of like, all right, this guy, look, he's got like 1 million views and he seems legit and he's like swole, and you're like, this is probably the guy I should listen to. And it's just, and we don't, and like for the average person, they don't have time to go through all the literature and try to find the best people.
Sure.
They and so that type of, if you have that type of financial backing and you can promote yourself in that way, you become the leader of the pack.
Yeah, and that's what I'm making an effort to do, right? Maybe not to be at that level, right? But to get out there as much as I can, and to promote myself, because I want to meet people halfway. Now, it's people's job to be more discerning with who they listen to. And one thing that we do with my podcast, I just surveyed my podcast. I want to see who people are listening to. In addition to me, they're listening to people who I know. I'm like, the only thing that I've learned from that person is marketing. How do you market better, right? How do you tell this story better? Because the storytelling is important, but there's
Very.
not people who I would ever listen to. They're like me, and it's like, I don't want to learn from, and not as good in some ways, and arguably better in some ways, because I'm very niche with what I do, by the way. But I focus. I know, for example, I don't get crazy with reading people's blood work or anything like that. I mostly focus on, like, hey, how do we change behavior, right? What are the things we need to do to manage the internal triggers, the negative thoughts, the distractions, so that you can get what you want.
Yeah.
I focus on the basics and then like whatever we got to work on psychologically. And I get great results with clients. And even clients who've never, for 10 years, they've been trying to do it on their own and they haven't been able to do it. I get results with those people. And again, don't believe me, be skeptical. But I've got a whole list of interviews with clients that I've done, and you can hear from them what they say.
Yeah. No, I actually, I love that you said that. I think people should be skeptical of everyone, like don't take what you hear one person say and take that as Bible. Like don't take that as the word of, like do the research, go around, talk to other people, and eventually the people that give out the good information, like you will circle back to them, because the others will, hopefully they'll get weeded out. But never take anything as Bible. Just do the research. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
good.
I used to promote low carb like crazy. I thought it made so much sense. You eat carbs, carbs raise insulin. Insulin's a fat storing hormone, therefore carbs make you fat. So don't ever do that. And I lived that way for a long time. And I was lean because I was doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu and lifting weights. But then when I stopped doing that, I thought, oh no, I have everything dialed in. And there were some other things too, lifestyle things. I mean, my sister committed suicide and just, a lot of crazy things. I was struggling in business, struggling with a lot of things in my life. And that's why I got fat. But that's part of why I got fat. But I didn't know what to do. I started when my dad passed away October 3rd, 2020. The months leading up to that, I got a little chubbier too, but I knew what to do. I knew what was going on. I knew how to rein it in. I just was so under stress that I couldn't take action. I just needed to just I was just doing my best, Roy. Just
Yeah.
doing my best. My whole situation changed a lot. Of like I went from Medellin, Colombia, where even in the lockdown, I was eating well. My stress was I was living in a place that I liked. I was seeing somebody, and then I went to Vero Beach, Florida, which just was just a huge difference from what I had. And so all the things that I was doing to manage my negative emotions kind of went out the door. But I knew what to do. I just couldn't do it, and I needed to reorient myself, and also to deal with all the stress that was happening with my dad's failing health. But yeah, the point was, even right, people who you're listening to now that are saying some things that they really believe, in 10 years they're not going to be saying the same thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, man, information changes all the time. People change. Yeah, that's why I don't like that term, like flip flop, as if it's like a derogatory term. Like people, politically, just as an example, like how I think today, I didn't think in this way 3 years ago. I evolved, I changed, my ideas changed. I looked into other people and what they were thinking, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. So we're evolving. We're never a final or a finished product. We're always forming new ideas, trying new things. So just, yeah, don't limit yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing that doesn't change is principles, right? Like for example, in business, you gotta have a service or product. You got to have some type of way to generate leads. Then you got to have a sales process, and then you got to have a fulfillment process. There's not going to be any change to that, right? You still have to have a product or a service. You got to have something, right, to sell, and there's got to be a sales process. But do you really need to post on social media? You don't have to do that, right? That's not a principle. That's a tactic. And the same thing with health and fitness. The whole total calories, the whole protein intake, lifting weights. That's never going to go away. But whether you do low carb or low fat, whether you do intermittent fasting or not, those things or what type of, do you do the 5-3-1 method from Jim Windler, or do you do the 5x5 strong lifts, or do you do high intensity training, right? Those are all tactics. But if you're lifting weights, that'll never. We know you've got to challenge your muscles. That's not going to change.
Yeah.
unless we change our genes or some technology gets invented or something or some medication. But that's a principle that's never going away. So really focus on the principles, and then how we apply those principles might change, though, for sure.
All right, and we'll leave it at that. Ted, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed. You're a very inspirational person. I think most people would not have been able to go through everything you went through and still be a positive person, still want to try to help people. So I salute you, my friend. You're pretty awesome.
I appreciate that, Roy. It was great meeting you. Thanks for having me on your show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and where can people find you? Where are some of the best places?
Yeah, if you want to listen to the podcast, the best place is to find Legendary Life Podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to go to my website, legendarylifepodcast.com is the place to go. So we have all our episodes there. You can sign up to my newsletter there. And yeah, that's the place to go,
And
legendarylifepodcast.com.
be sure also to follow Ted on Twitter. His Twitter game is on point, and he often posts and a lot of inspirational stuff. And yeah, go follow him there. It's awesome as well. Ted, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Take care, buddy.